Does the farm use any biodiesel?
Yes.
What percentage would you say is biodiesel?
What we get is it's a mixture of biodiesel, so the full supply of diesel that we get is biodiesel. It's I believe it's a 10% mixture.
Oh, so it's 10% biodiesel to 90% regular fossil fuel diesel. How is that working for you?
It works good. We're using some of our own product, essentially, and which makes the market for our product. We haven't seen any problems with it. The price is possibly maybe just a little bit more, but it all depends on the time period that you purchase your fuel. Whether you can get it cheaper in a bigger quantity.
So, Joe, I wanted to ask you more about biodiesel. Some of your crop could potentially go into the production of biodiesel.
Yes.
Have you ever sold directly to a biodiesel producer?
No.
No? Do they just come out and fill your tank with biodiesel, or do you have to ask for it?
Initially, you have to tell them that you'd like to utilize the biodiesel, and that's what we're on a regular schedule to have them stop and check the tanks, and if there's room to fill them up, and they'll refill them. But unless we tell them we don't want to use the biodiesel anymore, that's what they'll bring all the time.
Why do you use biodiesel?
It's to help generate our own market for our product that we utilize. We should be using some of our own product if it's going to be put into biodiesel.
Probably 30 years ago, and they started producing ethanol. But back then, there were enough other companies that put enough money aside to try to fight them. And back then, nobody really knew anything about ethanol. There are problems. I mean, a lot of people still complain about the fact that ethanol messes seals up in old cars. There's still enough of those around. So even though people that run strictly on ethanol say their engines are in better shape than running on gas.
Well,
it used to be sold as gasohol.
Gasohol,
It
really?
was a combination of ethanol and gas.
So when it came back into being made again, for those generations, there was that bad connotation to the use of gasohol and the cost and stuff, so they just didn't use that term.
That's why they call it E85 now.
Well, just about every new industry has some kind of misconception about it. Like windmills. Oh, the windmills are noisy and they kill birds and they're just this evil thing.
Does the carbon footprint of the farm ever enter decisions that you make for the farm?
It does, but it's not a real big decision. We utilize no-till for quite a few years now, and so the fodder and byproducts from the crops that we grow is left there to deteriorate, so the carbon is retained. There's markets in certain areas of the country where you can participate in a carbon sequestration market that they'll pay you something for the your carbon utilization. I think the right words.
So there's some incentive to use less, or there's some incentive to do what? To do no-till, or to use less fossil fuel, or?
To do no-till, but in using that, you're keeping the carbon and actually utilizing carbon that's in the air, because the crop takes some of that in. It reduces the carbon that's out there from other manufacturers.
Oh, okay. So part of the reason you do no-till is to do some carbon sequestration?
We didn't do that to start no-till. That's something that has come up in the years since then. That's a potential market that's out there if you have that locally, but you are helping reduce carbon in the air by keeping the fodder in the field.
So do you plant GMOs?
Yes, we do.
What kind of GMOs do you plant?
It's both corn and soybeans. It's mostly from Monsanto, which is Cropland Genetics, some Pioneer hybrids.
Why do you plant GMOs?
You're looking with the genetics and the genes that are in those seeds. It protects the crop from insects, plus it's tolerant to certain herbicides. So with the ability for the stalk to control the insect or kill the insect, they can't destroy the crop or reduce its production ability. And with herbicide tolerance, you can use less herbicide or the number of herbicides mixed together, because you can use potentially one or two anywhere during the season to control the weeds.
So you can use less pesticides if you use GMOs?
Potentially, yes.
Does that always work?
Not always, but it works very well if the growing season is normal, and how things, weed pressure and moisture, everything works together, and sometimes it doesn't always work.
You know, there are people that are opposed to GMOs.
Yes.
They think that GMOs might be poisoning people.
I don't believe that.
Do you think that GMOs are evil?
No. They are just a progression of genetics and increase in production of foodstuffs to feed the world, and it's helped us with the acreage in the world always being reduced by development, that the increase in production that you can generate with GMOs, it's increased the yields per acre, so you're growing more production from less acres in the world than what you could years ago.
Well, way back when you lived on the other farm down in Huber Heights, what was a typical yield when you weren't using GMOs?
most of the time you would think in the 120, 140 area.
120 bushels per acre?
Yeah, 120 bushels per acre, 140 bushels per acre was really decent yield.
And what are you yielding here?
In a good year, we can, with the hybrids you grow now, you can grow 160 to 200 and some bushels per acre.
So like 50% to even 100% more than you did when they were just the hybrids without GMOs.
Yes.
You use GMOs here on the farm.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? Do you think they're risky or do you think they're safe?
I think they're safe. To me, there's enough research that's gone into it to show that it's safe, and there's really no difference between it and non-GMO stuff, that it doesn't make a difference.
Do you think that any of those modified genes would leak out into non-crop plants and maybe cause problems? Like more weed-resistant or more Roundup resistant weeds and that sort of thing?
No, the genetics can't jump from plant to plant. No. Resistant weeds are more that they have learned to become resistant to the pesticides that we're using. And
what about pesticides? Do you use a lot of pesticides?
Not really. I mean, we have sometimes in the past, but because of rotation, that helps break the pest cycles and stuff, so we don't have to use it. You use it, I mean, it's like when you get sick, you might want to use antibiotics or something that, in a way, it's kind of the same way. If things get bad, you may want to use it, but you don't necessarily have to.
Do you use any kind of herbicide?
Yeah.
What do you use?
Predominantly Roundup. Because we no-till, and you're going to get more of a variety of weeds, and you need to keep those down because we're not using tillage to take out.
Okay. I've noticed that there are sections of this farm here that are in woods. They're not in crop land. Why did you leave the woods?
Because they're there when we bought the farm, and it's nice to have a woods there too.
Have you ever thought about cutting it down to expand your cropland?
We have, but then it's not necessarily the best land on the farm either, so it's kind of one of those, probably better to leave it there than...
So it won't make or break your farm if you don't use that. What conservation farming methods do you use?
No-till.
And what else?
We used to use biosolids for fertilizer, and when we used to milk cows, the manure was used for fertilizer.
Tell us what biosolids are.
Municipal sewage.
Okay, so it's human waste.
Human waste.
Did you ever worry about bacteria or heavy metals?
No, because the way they do it is the EPA regulations have a certain level, and from what they told us as we were working with them is that
it would take 30 years of using the maximum rate before you'd even get to where it would be the lower end of the EPA standards. Well, you test it all the time, so they would test it every several years just to know where they're at with it.
Where did those biosolids come from?
Ours came, some of it came from Dayton, most of it came from Fairborn because they didn't have a place to store it. So.
Okay, so then they needed to find a place to dispose of it. Okay, did you ever worry that you might catch something from the biosolids?
No, because they go through the whole composting process. What sewage is. There shouldn't be any bacteria that kind of step in it just because it's gone through the process.
Okay. What would have happened to the biosolids if you didn't have them on your farm?
A large part of it went to landfills.
So it would have been buried down at Stony Ridge or
any landfill that was open probably would.
For the corn, the combine goes through and essentially just pulls the stalk down and pops the ear off the stalk. So everything else other than the ear is taken into the combine, and then the grain is shelled off of the ear, so the cob gets deposited back onto the field too. So it's essentially just the grain that's taken away.
And do you like rake that up, or?
No, we don't do anything with it. It stays on the ground where it's deposited. It'll deteriorate over the fall and winter, and by spring, it's still there, but it's deteriorated so much that it's almost turns into a powder when you go back through to plant the next year's crop.
Does that help fertilize the crop?
Yeah, you're helping build up the organic matter.
So you can use less chemical fertilizers then if you do no-till?
Not really. You still need to fertilize the crop to grow what the potential for the crop is. It builds up your organic matter so that you got better soils to grow the crop in.
Does it protect the soil from washing away in the winter?
Yes.
How committed is the farm to conservation?
Very committed. We've done it for quite a few years.
What does conservation mean to you?
You're using equipment, the least amount of equipment to plant your crop, and keeping the ground the way it is. You leave the material from the crop before there to deteriorate and make organic matter. It's good for the fields. After a number of years, you'll notice a complete difference in the water retention of the ground in the worm population.
So there's more worms?
Yes.
And that's good for the crop?
Yes.
Why?
Well, it's the worm holes in the ground help water penetrate back in and ground to hold the water, and the worms process or take in and produce worm castings, and that builds up your soils.
All right. You have conservation easements on certain parts of the farm.
Yes.
What are those easements like?
They protect, it's the creeks and the edge of the river areas. It protects the creeks from being changed. It keeps them in the state that they're in. One creek is spring fed farther up the creek, so it runs year round, and there's actually some trout in that creek, and that was to protect that creek from changing those fish.
So to keep it stable.
Yeah, stable.
Okay. So you didn't have the same kind of machinery that you have here, or?
Well, the machinery is better, you know, more improved and everything. I don't remember doing a lot of the things by hand, but that's the way Dad did a lot of it. So you start getting bigger, better tractors until combines were invented.
How many acres did you have down there?
We were farming about 400 acres there.
And what do you farm now?
We're farming about 1,400.
Okay, so that's a big jump in acreage. Is the equipment that is it because the equipment is better that you were able to make that jump, or?
Yeah. I mean, it's bigger. The bigger equipment allows you to cover more acres, and you know, and like most businesses, you have to grow. So.
Yeah, it's grow or die, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, are the whole 1,600 acres or 1,400 acres here at this farm?
No, we about 830 acres are here, and then we rent the rest of the acres.
Okay. What would farming have been like for your great-grandmother's family, the Myers family?
A lot of hard work. That was still done with horses and horse equipment, so it was taking a lot longer, and they couldn't farm near as much ground that way.
What kind of yields per acre do you think they probably got?
Corn, I wouldn't be surprised to be more like 50 or 60 bushels the acre.
And what are you getting now?
150 to 200.
So you're getting 3 to 4 times as much per acre
Yes.
as your great-grandmother's family would have gotten.
Yes.
Is there anything that could increase that yield to like 400 or 500 bushels per acre?
Well, from what you read in the magazines, the genetics is continually improving, and that's what they think it should be able to get to, is with better genetics and better weed control and basically hybrid use.
What makes that difference?
Better fertilizers, better genetics in the seed, better land preparation, how you put the seed in the ground.
How would your great-grandfather have done that?
With a small horse-drawn planter that he had to work the ground pretty finely, and still didn't get good placement of the seed in the ground.
So he would have had to plow the field.
Yes.
And then what would he have done?
Disked them a couple times probably, and then planted.
And how would he have planted? Did he plant them by hand, or?
No, it would have been probably a small 2-row planter that pulled with a horse, or.
So 2 seeds at a time?
Yeah.
Okay. How long would that have taken him to, say, plant an acre?
4 or 5 hours probably.
How long does it take to plant an acre now?
15 minutes.
Wow, that's a huge difference. What kind of equipment are you using to place the seeds?
Corn is used with a corn planter. It cuts a slot in the ground and places the seed in there, and then pushes the dirt back over it.
Okay.
Newer technology can do a better job of that than what we have.
So like Joe said earlier, it gives you better soil to seed contact?
Yes.
Okay. This area of your farm floods,
Potentially, yes.
and does the fodder, as you said, stay on the ground then when it floods?
It will stay there until you get a high enough level of water, and it will tend to float along with the water, so it will take the material off the field and deposit it somewhere else. But it did protect the field for a longer period from just the rainfall itself.
So you have less erosion when you do this?
Yes.
The additional water is from climate change, or do you think it has to do with how much development is upstream?
Could be potentially from both. With the development, the amount of water that comes off of development and parking lots go into the creeks and rivers so much faster that it's going to build up a bigger volume of water quicker, so that it can't get away downriver as quick, so the river level could come up much quicker. There's always the extreme of rainfall. If it rains so much that the river's going to come up, and if there's enough of it, it's going to come over the levees.
You guys have a big aquifer that runs under your farm, and you do a lot of irrigation, and you get the water for the irrigation from the aquifer. What do you know about the aquifer? What can you tell me about it?
It's huge. You know, there's no, for what we use for irrigation, there's no way we could even come close. I mean, if the cities can pull 1 million gallons a day or whatever, I don't even know what the number is now, but they can pull millions of gallons a day out of there and not really affect the aquifer. A few 100,000 gallons or 1 million gallons we might pull out in one summer like this.
Well, this dry of a year, even with what irrigating, our neighbors irrigating, I met the one city employee when he was checking for water level out of the check wells. And he said it only dropped over the whole summer, maybe 4 feet.
Huh. Do you think that has anything to do with the creek drying up in the summer, your irrigation?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you could see it dry up, but you know the water table is close. I mean, that's because it wasn't until about late June before Lost Creek actually dried up. You know, and we've been irrigating before that, so.
But that's dried up at the surface. If you dug down fairly shallow, just a foot or two, there's still water running through there.
So, the aquifer is big enough that you don't really worry about running out of water.
No, that's why Dayton is an example as far as the wellhead protection and all that, because you know, years ago when that when Sherwin-Williams had that fire down there, that more people got to thinking about it, and now everybody knows a lot more about what we really, the resource we really are blessed with in the Miami Valley.
Speaking of well field protection, you guys use fertilizers out here.
Yes.
Are you concerned with any of the fertilizers infiltrating the aquifer?
There's always a concern that the way you farm and the amount of fertilizer you put on at any one time, you're going to have more of it possibly be carried away by a flood event than you will be leached down to the aquifer.
What kind of fertilizers do you use?
Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and some of the micronutrients.
What kinds of concentrations do you use? Do you go and cover a whole field, or?
Yeah. I mean, you want to have it. You want to have it spread out because you're planting a crop over the whole field, so you don't just put it a lot in one place and nothing somewhere else. So. Which is done better nowadays because of with GPS and variable rate, precision equipment that we can vary the rates over the field. So when you know what your soil tests are, then you can adjust it so that you can put the fertilizer where it's going to get the best use, which usually means that you use less fertilizer.
Okay. So how do you apply this fertilizer?
Put some nitrogen down with the planter when you plant, and the way we do our crops, we have the local co-op come in to spray the herbicides, and at the same time they put more nitrogen down with that herbicide.
But
this farm here, we actually have irrigation, center pivot irrigation on it, so a big percentage of the farm can be watered from pulling water up out of the aquifer, and the center pivot rotates in a circle and sprinkles water on the crop.
how is the irrigation system operated? How is it fueled?
The ones we have are electric, both to make the pivot move around the field and the pump that pumps the water are both electric.
So how often do you water?
It depends on what the weather is. If it's staying dry, and the crop is tall enough or grown far enough, you tend to want to put maybe an inch a week on.
You have other farms where you don't irrigate.
Correct.
And what is the difference in yields between that one and those and this one, do you think?
Depending upon the rain you get over the year, it can be less than half of what we get here on the other, compared to the other ground.